Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Today is December 15th, and we're here to do another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, obviously, we're going to focus in on how to become a successful freight broker or freight agent, and we're going to do that in a Q&A format, okay? So if you have questions about how to become a freight broker, how to become a freight agent, or anything in between, right? This is where we're going to address those questions live. And so I thank you for joining me. Again, I do these lives every week, Mondays at noon. So mark it in your calendars. For now, here's the agenda. You guys are going to hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'm going to give you some shout outs, and then we're going to jump into the live Q&A. Hold your questions until I say go, because otherwise they're going to get lost in the feed and I'm never going to see them. Okay. So for those of you that are live, give me a heads up. Let me know and hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. Let me see what we got here. Boom. Okay, so we got some people live. Great. All right. Corey Buckin from Billings, Montana. How much snow you guys got, buddy? You got a bunch of snow? I'll bet you do. We've got a bunch of snow here in Buffalo, and I know you get a lot more than we do. Ashley from Wilmington, Ohio. Welcome. A foot? That's it? My God, I got 2 foot down at my property an hour south of here. Yeah, we got a bunch of snow. Up here, we've probably got 6 inches, but an hour south of me at my property, we got at least 2 foot. W. Grogan, 17 degrees in Washington, D.C. Welcome from Washington, D.C. So guys, hit me up in the comments. We'll do some quick shout outs. This is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, we're going to be doing a Q&A again, once again, whether that be about freight broker startup or how to become an agent or anything in between, how to get shippers, rating, load boards, AI, tech, anything in between. Let me know. I'll do my absolute best to try to answer those questions for you. Again, I don't have all the answers, but I've been very fortunate. I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. Had a freight brokerage, been in the freight industry since 2003, have trained over 10,000 students through my online training programs and my coaching programs. So I've learned a few things along the way, and I'd love to pass those on to you. And today, this is absolutely a free Q&A, costs you absolutely nothing. So there you go. Let's see what we got. T. Landy from New Jersey checking in. Awesome. Welcome. Shanty from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we got some people from all over the place. I'm not sure. We're getting close to the holidays here, so I'm not sure what to expect with these lives. We're going to take it about another minute to let people get live, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. Hold your questions for now. Otherwise, they will probably get lost somewhere in the feed. So do me a favor. If this is your first time is a part of one of these lives, hit me up in the comments and let me know. Just let me know, hey, I'm a first timer. This is my first live. Let me know. I love to hear from my first timers. And if you're a student of Freight Broker Bootcamp or my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, my courses, my courses and coaching program, let me know in the comments if you're one of those as well. If you're a student of Bootcamp or a student of my Sales Accelerator, let me know that. I'd love to hear, maybe give you an extra shout out. We got Philip from Dallas. We got Freight Hustler from Richmond, Virginia. Welcome. Denise and others. We've got TJ Hines from Tampa. Ashley's a first timer. Love it. Perfect. TJ Hines, student of boot camp. Love it. Perfect. All right, guys. So listen, we're going to jump right in. The water's warm. We might as well get this show on the road. I appreciate everybody who has done the who hit me up here, and we were able to do a shout out. Shanty, welcome. Shanty did my boot camp and my accelerator. Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. All right, let's jump into Q&A. Who's got questions for me? That could be questions about startup, like, getting your broker authority or becoming an agent or setting up your home office or, any of the tech involved, or it could be about marketing. It could be about sales. It could be about AI. It could be about carriers or rating or anything in between, right? Give me a question. I'll do my absolute best. I don't have all the answers. If I don't have the answers, I will try to point you in the right direction. Okay. So here we go. First question, TJ Hines. I'm cold calling shippers and I have the right contact info from LinkedIn, but at times they send me to someone else who's in charge of transportation. Is that normal? But it's usually an email. All right, let me read that again. I'm cold calling shippers and I have the right contact info from LinkedIn, but at times they send me to someone else who's in charge of transportation. Is that normal? Well, I'm not quite sure who you're contacting. You said I have the right contact information. If they're sending you to someone else, then chances are that person is in control or has the baton when it comes to freight logistics transportation. So, and a lot of times they're going to send you to an email, right? Because they're trying to screen out cold calls. So this is a way that sometimes corporate offices, whether that be a receptionist or some sort of an automated system, where they try to screen out cold calls, right? So, my suggestion to you is when you call in, one of the best and easiest ways to avoid being screened out is to not sound like a cold call, right? So rather you saying, hey, could I talk to Dennis Brown, the shipping manager? Sounds like cold call to me, right? If you could just say, hey, could you put me through to Dennis in shipping? It sounds a lot more casual. It sounds a lot more like familiarity. It sounds like I know you, right? Or you know me, right? Depending on how you want to frame it. So the point is that that's one of the easiest ways not to raise a red flag. Typically, the screeners are going to need a red flag in order to try to screen you out. But if they just think that you're part of the normal day-to-day mix, then they're going to put you through, right? So that's one of the easiest ways to avoid being screened out. So my suggestion to you is call back and don't sound like you're cold calling. And you know the name of the person you're trying to get in touch with. Don't say, hey, is Joe in control of shipping and logistics? Don't ask that question. Just say, hey, can you put me through to Joe in logistics or shipping or transportation or whatever, right? Make it sound more conversational and familiar, and you'll get screened less. Hope that helps. All right, next question. What would be an easy reefer work? What would be an easy reefer work to start with? Okay, so you're talking about refrigerated transport, right? You're talking about you moving reefers. So there are a wide variety of products that are moved on refrigerated, okay? The two that are the most challenging, I'm going to give you the two that are the most challenging, and anything else in between you could probably do. But the two that are the most challenging, particularly to new people, are produce, fresh produce, a perishable that needs to go in a refrigerated trailer because it needs temp control. Typically, it doesn't need crazy. It just needs to stay fresh, right? So you're not freezing it. Okay, that's the next step. So produce can be challenging. It has a lot of nuances, all right? And you need some experience there. You need to do some research there. You need to get your boots on the ground there a little bit before you feel comfortable. The other one is like a deep freeze, like a frozen, like a 10 below, like ice cream, okay? Now, ice cream might seem like something that's simple, but the problem is that sometimes, particularly if you have older equipment, it's hard for them to hold the temperature at 10 below. And that's usually what, at least in my experience, ice cream needs to ship at, right? So something that is deep frozen requires -10, which is, like I said, ice cream is one of the no-brainers. We used to do a lot of that with Unilever. But the point is that sometimes, depending upon the age of the reefer, depending upon the geography where you're going to, it's harder to keep a reefer at -10 when you're going through Arizona that's 100 degrees than it is to keep a reefer at -10 when you're going through Montana when it's 20 degrees. Do you follow what I'm saying? So those are two that I would kind of try to avoid. Everything else in the middle. I mean, there are bottled beverages that need to go on refrigerated. There are all kinds of different frozen products, right? Sometimes pharmaceutical drugs need to go on refrigerated temperature control. They don't need to be frozen, but they need to be kept at a certain temperature, maybe 50 or 60 or below 70, somewhere between 50 and 70, so that they don't have a problem with the drug. So there's a variety of things that go on reefers. I gave you a couple things that you definitely want to be careful of, and then a few others in the middle that might be a good idea for you to take a closer look at. Hope that helps. I'm contacting the shipping managers, director of transportation managers directly. Okay, so that was a follow-up to your, okay. So yeah, so rather than asking for the shipping manager, rather than asking for the director of transportation, rather than asking for the transportation manager, just say, hey, can I talk to Joe in transportation or logistics or, shipping? And then be casual about it. Like I said before, show some familiarity. Don't sound like you've never spoke with them before. Okay. And that in itself will save you a lot of getting screened out. Philip Coleman, do you have any tips on where to focus efforts when building brokerage credit in the initial 1 to 2 years? Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I have a free course that you can have full access to on how to build your broker credit your first year or two. Okay. I'm going to let me pull up this link really quick. And I think it will work. Let me just see. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so if you go to, hold on a minute, I'm going to give you a link. Give me 1 second. I got to create a link here for you. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to put it up on the screen now. So if you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit, that is a program that my friend, the CEO, Tom at Operify put together. They're a factoring company, and they put together an entire master broker credit program. It's a training. I went through the entire training. It's really, really good. There's a lot of stuff in there that you really, most people don't think about. And because you're part of the Freight Broker Bootcamp community, it's absolutely free. Costs you nothing. They normally charge a couple $100 for it, but it's free. Okay. Through this link, at least for now it is, right? So if you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit, it's going to bring you to a form where you can sign up and you'll be able to get inside the program. It's absolutely free, costs you nothing. Now, of course, they're a factoring company, so they would love to be able to try to provide factoring. As a matter of fact, they specialize in new brokers that need factoring. So that may be a good avenue for you. As a matter of fact, if you, let me see, maybe I have that other link here. If you're looking for credit, or if you're looking for factoring, let me try to find that link. I can't find it here. I don't know why. Oh, here it is. So the top one is for broker credit, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. If you need factoring and you're a startup, if you're a freight broker and you're a startup or you're a smaller broker, right? Maybe you've only been in business a few years. You can also talk to somebody on the phone. And because you're a part of my community, they're really going to take care of you. They've done a really great job. I've heard nothing but really good things about it. You can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/cash flow. That's if you're looking for a factoring company. But if you just want broker credit, a course on broker credit and have it be free, normally it would cost you a couple $100. Just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. You see it there on the screen. So I hope that helps. Okay. Let me see what we got here. All right. Question from Ashley. Is hazmat certification required for booking truckloads as a broker, or does that fall under the actual carrier and not apply to the broker? Okay, so legally, a freight broker is not required to be certified in hazmat. Okay, now but the carrier has to have certification in hazmat. I mean, they have to go through a special training. They have to have a hazmat placard on their truck, so that equipment and driver is authorized to haul hazmat. But as a broker, you are not required to do that. But I would strongly recommend there are some courses online. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. I don't do hazmat training myself, but I would strongly suggest that if you are a new broker looking into hazmat, if you are a new agent looking into hazmat, that you try to get some specific training, because of course, hazmat is exactly that. There's some danger involved. There's some liability involved. So just be careful. And not all hazmat is the same, right? Some hazmat can be something that's, there's different grades of hazmat. There's different degrees of difficulty. There's different degrees of danger when it comes to hazmat. Not everything is equal, right? When you're transporting, toxic hazardous waste versus if you're just transporting a chemical, like say, for example, like maybe something that's hazardous that might be a fertilizer of some sort that might be deemed hazardous. Well, then ultimately there's a big difference between those two, and you want to understand that. So I would suggest you do go through a certification, but it's very different than if you're a driver or a carrier. Okay. So hope that helps. Okay. Who else has questions? Those were a bunch of questions we got really quick. We knocked those out really, really quick. I hope that helps. Again, if you guys need help with building your credit as a new broker, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/broker credit. You see it on the screen. If you're looking for factoring as a new broker, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/cash flow. And you can, they'll set up a call with you. They'll go through, they'll tell you everything you need to know about factoring. So, boom. All right, so hold on a second here. So Ashley says, the Dunn's, okay, so Dun & Bradstreet platform for credit checks you mentioned, we're required to pay for those out of pocket, correct? Yeah, so if you want to run credit on anybody, no matter what business you're in, yeah, typically running credit, just like running credit on yourself, in many cases costs money, especially if you're running it on a business. So yeah, there are different levels of credit report and data that you buy from credit services that and those levels have different pricing structures. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars on a credit report for a new shipper, but you do need to make sure that you run some credit on them so you understand kind of their average days to pay, how long they've been in business, who are some of their vendors, right? And it'll give you a rating of some sort. It'll say what, let's say hypothetically like 1 to 100, 1 is terrible, 50 is not great, 100 is perfect, kind of like your own personal credit scores, they go up to, but they range it a little bit different. So yeah, you will be responsible for paying for that, especially if you go through Dun & Bradstreet. Another good one is called Ansonia. I think they were Ansonia, Ansonia. They specialized in transportation credit. I think they were purchased by Equifax not long ago, or Experian, one of the two. But yeah, you will have to pay for running credit. Yes, 100. That's a business expense you're going to have to build in. So you're only going to run credit on customers that you've actually gotten orders from. You're not going to run credit on prospects that have not given you an order. Okay, you definitely don't want to do that. You'll spend a lot of money for no reason. Okay. All right. What 3 tips would you give a freight broker to be successful in 2026? Okay. 3 most important tips to be successful in 2026 are you talking about I'm assuming a new broker, right? Are you talking about a brand new broker, or are you talking about someone that's already established? Clarify that in the questions. If it's a brand new broker, those tips are going to be a little bit different. Okay. So hit me back in the chat box and clarify if it's a new broker or existing established broker. Ashley says, I know they have freight credit history specifically, so I wasn't sure. Yep, no problem. TJ Hines asks, I've made contact with a lot of shippers who are in charge of transportation, but they have established business with other carriers. How many times should we follow up to stay on their radar as a backup? You follow up with them until they tell you not to follow up with them anymore. Now, let me qualify that. You're not going to call them every day, and you're probably not going to call them every week. Maybe initially you're trying to get in touch with them and they're saying, hey, we're happy with our current providers. One of the things you can do is you can ask them, say, listen, I can totally appreciate where you're at. Would you be opposed to me following up in 30 or 60 or 90 days just to have another quick conversation to ensure that you're still happy with your current providers? And then at that point, follow their direction, right? If they say, yeah, give me a call in a month, follow up within a month. If they say, give me a call in 90 days, we'll talk to you then and see if things have changed, give them a call then. But you can't call a prospect who's told you they're happy with their current providers on a weekly basis, because that's going to do nothing but have a negative impact on their impression of you. They're going to start to think you're a jerk, okay? Because you can't listen. So I'm all about following up, but I'm all about following up intelligently that doesn't build a barrier between me and the prospect. And that's what following up every day or every week will do with a prospect that's told you they're happy with their current provider. So I hope that helps. Oh, okay, good. That's why I asked. Okay, so let's go back to that. All right, let's go back to that question. What are 3 tips you would give freight brokers to be successful in 2026? So we're going to do 2 versions. One is an established broker and one is a new broker. So the established broker, okay? So what I would tell you is this: one of the most important things that you can do in this market, okay, is if you're established, you got to put your sales hat back on, right? A lot of established brokers get very complacent and they stop selling, okay? And they're like, oh, I make a few cold calls a week. That's not going to build your sales funnel. You're not going to get clients from that. So if you want to grow your revenue and your clients, there's only 2 ways to do it. You get it from your existing clients or you get new clients. So my suggestion to you is roll your sleeves up, put your sales hat back on, and start focusing on getting new clients that fit your ideal customer profile. That's probably number 1 if you want to grow. Number 2, have more conversations than ever with your existing clients. Stay as close to your existing clients as you can. Be like glue, okay? Now, this is a situation where you want to have more conversations, and in a perfect world, you want to go visit them. Here's why. Because we've just went from a very stagnant market to a very more volatile market, and volatility creates opportunities. What I mean by that is when rates go up and capacity gets tight, right? That's when we start getting a lot of tender rejections. That's when we start getting a lot of service issues. That's when shippers start feeling more pain. Their price is going up. Service is getting worse, okay? And so ultimately, you want to stay as close as you can so you don't get pickpocketed by somebody else, right? That will also allow you to expand your business into other lanes, other facilities, other products, other modes, okay? So that's another one. And then probably the third one would be, let's see, so for existing brokers, most brokers are really lousy at marketing, okay? They're really lousy at marketing. And I'm not going to give you a marketing lesson here, but here's one thing you could do to really help your sales efforts that isn't real salesy. Go to every one of your existing clients, okay? Go to every one of your existing clients and get a written or video testimonial from them. If you've got 10 clients, you should get a testimonial from every single one of them. And if they're not willing to give you a testimonial, ding, 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 that might be a problem, okay? So you as a broker or an agent should get a testimonial from every single one of your clients. Now that testimonial could say, hey, Dennis is the greatest thing since sliced bread. He saved us a bunch of money and we don't know what we do without him. Or it might say, hey, we really like doing business with Dennis and, XYZ Logistics. Thank you for all your help. Either way, it's an endorsement. There's an old saying, when you say it about yourself, it's bragging. But when someone else says it about you, it's proof, okay? So I strongly suggest you use social proof as a part of your sales process. Now, you can use those testimonials as a part of your sales process as you're following up with prospects in order to build trust, because that is the number one barrier that stops you from getting new clients. It's not price. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll fight anybody about this. It's not price, it's trust. All right. So I hope that helps. Those are 3 tips for established brokers. Now I could probably give you 50 if we sat here long enough, but those are 3 that kind of came to mind, particularly as it stands right now in this market. Now, I'm going to give you 3 tips as it relates to new brokers. So if you're a brand new broker and you haven't really launched yet and you're just getting started, all right? Number 1 tip, niche down. You need to niche down. You need to find a niche. I've talked about it a million times. Riches are in niches. What do I mean by that? Rather than just going out and trying to serve every type of equipment in every industry in all geographies, which is virtually impossible, particularly for a new broker, find a niche. Maybe it's steel in the Midwest, or maybe like me, it's Northeast outbound van freight when we first started back in 03, 04. Maybe it's you have a background in produce, so you're going to dive into the produce niche. Maybe it's any number of things, right? But you want to niche down. That's number 1. Number 2, when you start selling, your job is to sound exactly opposite of every salesperson that's ever called and tried to sell you anything. Okay? So you don't want to sound like everybody else. There's 2 words I use all the time. Be different. So rather than using generic sales scripts, okay, that you can find online, or maybe you've heard from another broker, or who knows, like, hey, we're a freight broker. We got trucks in your area regularly. I wonder if we can help you out. That they've heard that 1,000 times. And the problem with that, shippers have heard that 1,000 times. And so what happens is it automatically triggers a negative response. Right? So as soon as they hear those words coming out of your mouth, they're automatically coming up with an objection. And that objection is, we're happy with our current providers, or we don't use brokers, or we're not interested. Right? So they've been conditioned to give you a negative response because you sound like everybody else. But if you sounded a little bit different, if you created what I call a compelling sales hook, right? And you use that to get your prospects' attention, draw them in, have a conversation so you can start asking some questions and navigate through the sales process, that makes things a lot easier. Okay, so that's number 2. Probably number 3 would be focus on relationships over transactions. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to shippers and carriers, they can tell, just like if you're what I call a paycheck player, if you're just in it for the money and you're just in it for you, it's obvious. It's glaringly obvious. They can see it, they can hear it, they can smell it, right? But if, for example, when you're dealing with carriers or you're dealing with shippers, you're focused on them, and you're in a situation where particularly, let's say, for example, with a carrier, right? So relationship, if you move a load with a carrier and then that load goes well, your job is not to find the next load with the next carrier. Your job is to develop a relationship with that carrier so that you can use that same carrier over and over again. Now, that may or may not happen because of the dynamics of their business versus the way your freight lines up. But you need to focus on trying to help that carrier solve their problems. And as a byproduct of that, you may benefit, and you probably will benefit, especially if they're able to successfully move your freight. So that's an example. Those are probably 3 tips. Again, I could probably give you 30, but those are the 3 tips for new brokers. I hope that helps. That was a little lengthy, but that was a good question, so I wanted to spend a few minutes on it. Okay, is there a cost-efficient CRM to use? We're just starting out. Okay, so cost-efficient is subjective, all right? There are free CRMs, most of which are junk. There are super cheap CRMs, most of which are junk. And then there's, there's super expensive CRMs, which you don't need. So I have a relationship with a CRM provider. Let me see. I think it's right here. Let's see. Let me just see if I can find the link where you guys can go and check it out. Okay, so If you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM, okay, if you go there, you're going to see, let me just make sure that that link still works. I think it does. Yeah, you're going to see Sales-CRM. Now, the reason why I like this CRM is number one, it's very affordable. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it is specifically designed for the freight brokerage industry. Most CRMs are generic to an industry. Okay, and so they're not tailored and customized specific to freight brokerage. But the Sales-CRM is specific to freight brokerage. So if you go there, I think you can sign up for a free trial. There's different offers that they have. You can schedule a demo. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do there if you want to take a closer look at it. I've had some amazing feedback from students who love Sales-. Again, I think they're very affordable. I think they're very reasonably priced. They've got a couple different programs that you can, there's like a pro and an enterprise and all this different stuff. But yeah, I think it's very affordable. Now, if you are brand new, having a CRM is a little bit optional. You can operate off of paper. You can operate off a spreadsheet if you really want to. But once you start ramping up your sales effort, you're definitely going to want a CRM because that is the repository for all of your leads and prospect and customer data as it relates to sales. Now, the TMS, your transportation management system, is the repository for all your load data and all your carrier data, right? So yeah, I would highly recommend them. Josh Lyles, a friend of mine, I've known him for several years now. He's done a great job with that product, and I think you guys will really, really like it. So check it out. Give it a shot. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. Let me see if we got any other questions here. Freight Hustler, as an asset-based freight brokerage, okay, or just a standalone broker, would you recommend having more than one factoring company for payments, quick pay, supply chain, et cetera? In most cases, you're not going to be able to have more than one factoring company, okay? Matter of fact, I've personally never heard of anybody having more than one factoring company. Here's why. Because your invoices, if you're a factoring company, okay, and you're a broker using a factoring company, that factoring company is going to have a UCC filing, which is like a financial tool that protects them on all of your invoices. So they're typically going to have a UCC, and only one bank can have a UCC, which a factoring company is basically like a private bank in a way. So you probably won't be able to have more than one factoring company, right? As a broker, okay? So again, I don't know about the asset-based side because I've never owned my own trucks. But on the brokerage side, you're typically only going to have one factoring company. You won't have a different factoring company for different customers. You won't have a different factoring company for different types of payments. Okay, so I could be wrong, but I'm 98% sure that's going to be the case because I've never talked to any of them. I've had over 10,000 students go through this program. Hundreds and many of them have went on to build highly successful businesses. Many of them have used factoring, and I've never heard of any of them having multiple factoring companies, although I have had that question before. So I hope that helps. Ashley, what is a goal for new clients weekly or monthly that's ideal for new brokers? Again, there is no right or wrong answer here. What I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap on what I think would help you. Your goal as a new broker is to start generating cash flow as quickly as you can. Because cash flow, what I mean by that is if you move some profit, okay? If you start generating some profit, what happens is that profit and cash flow is like oxygen. What happens to a human if we don't have oxygen? We die. What happens to a business if it doesn't have cash flow? They die, okay? So you need to focus on it like your life depends on it, because in reality, your business life does depend upon cash flow. So what I'm going to strongly suggest is up front, you try to front load maybe what you lack in experience, you make up for in effort, right? So front load that effort to try to start getting your first 2 or 3 shippers pretty quickly. Now, I know some students that have went through the program and some other brokers that have gotten a client week 1. I know others that it took 3 or 4 months to get their first client. But then they went on, one example in particular, they took him 4 months to get his first client, but then in that next year after that, he did over $1 million in sales. So the point is that there's no hard and fast answer. What my suggestion to you is get your first client as quickly as you can, ideally in the first month, right? Start moving freight for your first client and then parlay that. What you want to start doing is you want to start getting between 2 and 4 new clients every month, right? You should be able to land 2 to 4 new clients every month, regardless of your experience level, okay? The more experienced you are, the more you'll probably get. The less experienced you are, you should be able to get at least 2 new clients per month. Now, here's the cool part. Here's the cool part, Ashley, and everybody else who's listening. One of the greatest parts about freight brokerage is you can make a 6-figure income right in the Hip National Bank with between 5 and 10 clients. I'm not talking about US Steel and Nestle and Unilever. I'm not talking about big enterprise clients. I'm talking about small clients that are doing 1 or 2 loads, maybe 3 loads a week, right? Small clients. If you have 5 or 10 clients like that, you will have the opportunity to earn a 6-figure income. Most brokers that I know, most agents that I know that have, say, $1 million to $3 million book, they've only got between 5 and 15 clients that they're doing business with, right? So they don't have a lot of active shippers. So it doesn't require you to go out and get hundreds of clients or thousands of clients to start making a really good income. Now, the more clients you get, the better as long as you're servicing them properly, you can grow that revenue. Again, our first year in business, we did about $1 million in sales. And then second year, we did about $3 million. Then our third year, we did about $6 million. Then our fourth year, we did $12 million and 18 and so on and so forth. When I sold the company, we were doing over $80 million a year in sales. Now by then we had thousands of clients, right? That we were doing business with. So, but that took time, right? So I hope that helps. Okay, what is your opinion on using Carrier 411 to find and build relationships with carriers? What would you recommend the best way? I know there are some tools in there where you can search for carriers and develop relationships with them. Here's my problem with that strategy, okay? Let's say you find 10 carriers that want to do business with you as a broker, okay? One of them's in Washington, one of them's in Texas, one of them's in Florida, one of them's in Tennessee, one of them's in California. They're spread out throughout the country, okay? It doesn't really matter if you have those carrier relationships unless they fit and can support your shipper needs. So in most cases, what I teach people is this. You find the shippers first, and then based upon their needs and your specific niche, then you find carriers. In most cases, as a new broker, you're going to develop your initial carrier relationships from a load board. And then that load board will transition into a relationship, and then you'll be able to move those, you'll be able to develop a more involved and mutually beneficial relationship. But initially, they're going to start on load boards. Now, if you have, for example, if you've got a shipper in Dallas that has refrigerated freight that you need to move, and you have a source where you can identify outside of a load board and you can find refrigerated carriers that are in Dallas or, travel to Dallas or deadhead to Dallas or whatever, they're there at some point. Maybe they're domiciled there. Maybe that's just a lane that they run. Then great. But the source that I find best for finding carriers that are specific to your customers' needs are load boards. Because you could call a database of carriers till you're blue in the face and not find one that matches up with the freight that you're moving. If they're in Texas, they're not going to drive to Florida to move your freight, right? If they're in New York, they're not going to drive to Chicago to move your freight, right? So the carrier has to line up with your freight needs. If you got a load today out of Chicago going to Boston, right? It doesn't matter if you got a carrier in Boston. It only matters if you got a carrier in Chicago. So it's very dynamic. So I hope that makes sense. I hope those examples help. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap this up, but I have one thing I want to share with you guys. On a scale of 1 to 10, did you learn anything from this live? 1 meaning, did you find value in this live? Hit me up in the comments with 1 to 10, right? Now, based upon that feedback, if you say this was terrible, right, just give me a rating from 1 to 10 on this live. The quality of the questions, the quality of the answers, the entire engagement, your entire process here. Give me some feedback. If it's any less than an 8, then just explain to me why. What can I do better? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to better serve you, right? I'm not up here doing this live to placate my ego. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos and hundreds of lives, right? I don't need to placate my ego or just sit up here and talk to myself, right? I'm really trying to serve you. And I want to know how to do that better. So, all right, so we got some really good feedback. Okay, so do me a huge favor before we go. If you guys found value in this live, here's what I want you to do. Do me a huge favor right now. It'll be a personal favor to me. I truly appreciate it. I'm trying to get my Google reviews up to 100 reviews. I think we're at like 60 or 70 right now. We only started working on them recently, right? So if you're a student or someone that got value from my free content, like my live or my YouTube, do me a favor, go to freightburgerbootcamp.com/reviews. Give me an honest review. It'll be like a 1 to 5 star rating. You could put a little comment in there. Do me a huge favor. I would take it as a personal favor to me if you would be willing to do that. All I'm asking for is an honest review. I don't want you to make anything up. I don't need you to placate my ego. Just give me an honest review. If you found value in my Freight Burger Bootcamp course, my Freight Burger Sales Accelerator, my Freight Burger Bootcamp lives, or maybe my YouTube channel that has hundreds and hundreds of videos there, do me a huge favor. Go to freightburgerbootcamp.com/reviews. It'll cost you $0. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to take your credit card out. You don't have to do any of that. All you have to have is a Google account, which everybody has. And you can write a quick review, and I would really, really appreciate it. That's the price of admission for me coming here on these Mondays, spending an hour with you. I'm going to don't take this the wrong way, guys. But my hourly rate when I did consulting, because I don't really do much of it anymore, was $1,000 an hour. Okay. So that hour we just spent, I would have invoiced somebody $1,000. Now you're not getting an invoice for the questions I answered you. You're not getting an invoice for the answers you got or the knowledge you gained. The price of admission is just do me a huge favor, hit up freightburgerbootcamp.com/reviews. And I really, really appreciate it. Again, I'll take it as a personal favor for you guys to, if you do that. And for any of those that you came late, do me a huge favor. Follow through with it. Hit me up in the comments with #replay if you're catching this on replay. I'll be back. As long as you guys are engaged, asking really good questions, and you're happy with this process, I'll continue to come here week after week. I have debated on doing this maybe once every couple weeks or once a month, but right now I'm going to stick with once a week. So the more good reviews that I get, the more Google reviews I get, the more likely I am to come here every week. So appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next week, Monday at noon for the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all. Appreciate it.